going on, everybody? Welcome back to another trout fishing tips video here at the channel. Today we're going to go through the top 5 tips for using power eggs, one of my favorite trout baits to catch really big stock trout no matter what time of the year. Now my number 5 tip for fishing power eggs is to fish these in all seasons throughout the year: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And here's why. I think a lot of times when anglers are out trout fishing, they really stick to the doe and they forget about the eggs. And when you start fishing these year round, you're gonna find out what colors fish really good in which spots of the lakes or ponds that you're fishing in, and what colors work well in what types of seasons and water conditions. And I think the more that you fish the eggs, you're gonna see your hookup and land ratio of trout to increase steadily the more you use the power eggs throughout all seasons of the year. Now my number 4 tip for using power eggs is to make sure that you get the hook exposed in the power egg instead of covering it up with the entire power egg. And here's why. With the eggs, because it is a condensed version of the power bait dough, you're gonna wanna make sure that you've got the hook exposed, because if you cover the entire hook, it's easier for the fish to swallow the bait, but then when you set the hook, you don't get that hook coming out of the bait to actually hook the trout once it's swallowed it, and a lot of times you'll miss a lot of hookups that way. Now what I've got here is I've got the hook halfway down and I curl it out the side to leave the hook exposed and have the power egg covering about half of the hook. And for me, what I'll find is that the fish will go after the egg, and the hook, as long as you've got it in the right position, the hook won't matter in terms of scaring the fish off. I've caught dozens and dozens of trout with this exact setup with the power egg about halfway with the hook exposed. And I think the biggest thing that people do is they think that they just gotta keep the hook entirely concealed like this when it comes to power eggs, because that's what they're always used to when they're fishing it with power bait dough. Anglers can't figure out why they're missing their hookups when they're fishing power eggs. That's because they've got the hook fully covered by the egg and they aren't able to get a good hook set in the lip or have that trout swallow it completely and self-hook itself. You wanna make sure a little bit of the hook is exposed, and you will get a higher hookup and land ratio when you start using power eggs with that setup. Now my number 3 tip for fishing with power eggs is to only have one egg on the hook at a time. What I've found and what I've seen is there are other anglers that like to put 2, I've even seen up to 3 power eggs on a single hook. And while yes, that may be a good recipe for certain days and situations for you to have some decent hookup days, I found with using power eggs, whether you have 1, 2, or 3, that you just have a better hookup and a better ratio of catching more trout when you go with the 1 egg. Plus, when you go with 2 or 3, you're almost like wasting the eggs in a little bit of that sense, where if you lose them or if the fish swallows them, you're not gonna get them back. Like, you're putting 2 eggs out there instead of 1, so you're getting more bang for your buck when you're using 1 instead of 2, and 3 is really overkill. And even in areas where you have large trophy trout that might be stocked, I've caught some of the biggest trout of my life in the last couple years with just 1 power egg. And especially in the fall time, as the temperatures of the water start to drop and the fish's metabolism starts to slow down, they actually want smaller presentations rather than those bigger presentations. So those people that think, oh, bigger fish, I need 3 power eggs to really get and catch these big fish. No, that's not the case. You want the smaller presentation and go with the 1 power egg. You don't need to go with 2 or 3. It's simply just overkill and really unnecessary. Just go with the 1 and you will increase and get more hookups of trout. Now my number 2 power eggs tip is gonna be to fish these in warmer water and warmer conditions overall. What I found in the late spring and the summer times, as water temperatures really start to increase, I like to switch over to the power eggs for a couple reasons. Now, when you're out fishing and the water temperature is increasing and it's much warmer outside, you have to make sure that the baits that you take with you are staying as cool as possible. What you'll find at times is if you're leaving jars out or if you got your tackle box out and it's getting warmer, your baits are also warming up too. Now the challenge with that when you're using power bait dough is the dough gets a little bit warmer. It doesn't have that same consistency as it once was. What you'll find is it's more difficult to keep the dough on the hook, whether you're casting out, whether it's hitting the water. The fish also seem to strip the dough off a little bit easier in the summertime, whereas the power eggs will stay right on the hook. They don't disintegrate. They stay the same consistency no matter what the temperature. So when the weather starts to warm up, I actually like to switch to the power eggs. Now my number 1 tip for fishing with power eggs is to fish these in areas that have structure and are a little bit grassier on the bottom. Because the power eggs hold their shape and they aren't the power bait dough, you're able to keep them on the hook a little bit easier when you're fishing around structure and grass. In the later part of the spring and the summer, especially when you've got different types of structure in the water and you've got a little bit more grass and vegetation at the bottom of the lake or the pond or wherever you're fishing, when you cast your bait out there, a lot of times what you'll find is that dough will be knocking against the grass or structure underneath and can knock that dew off fairly easy, whereas the power egg will hold on to the hook. And the other thing is when you're casting out and then reeling in, a lot of times you'll get your bait stripped off your hook and you can't figure out whether it was a fish or whether it was the grassy structure in the water that was the reason that you lost your bait. Whereas the power egg's gonna hang on and stay on your hook. I've just found in those grassier and structure conditions that the eggs hold on better to the hook than the dough does, no matter whether it's in the spring, the summer, or the fall time frame. So if you're fishing a grassy area, go with the power eggs and you will start to see that you're gonna catch more trout no matter what. And that's my top 5 power eggs trout fishing tips video. I hope you guys got some tips and info from this today to help you catch more trout the next time you hit the lake or the pond. Now hit the like button, subscribe if you love trout fishing and other outdoor content, and as always guys, the outdoors is a gift, share it with others.